Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world. This is part 2 of this episode. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. Link in the description.
This episode is brought to you by Founder Catalyst. If you're raising funds and you need to get yourself SCIS and EIS advanced assurance and you need some help with that, then stick around to find out how you can get 5% off of Founder Catalyst's services. Okay, and we're back for part 2. If you haven't checked out part 1 of this conversation, I highly recommend you do that first. You don't have to if you don't want to, but we're obviously talking about sales today because I'm with a sales leader, expert, go-to-market expert, etc. So it would make sense if you're interested in that topic to stick around. So, the end of part 1, we were talking, I explained it, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper on what you were mentioning earlier about AI and its kind of influence on sales. It's something that I'm quite bullish on, I guess, in maybe a slightly different way than most. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious to know, like, in your experience, what's your thoughts on it overall, having seen it sort of develop as it has over the years? I think probably in much the same way I have. What's your kind of takeaways from it? Like, where is it headed? Is it, how useful is it? What are the pitfalls of it, etc.?
It's mind-blowing, really. In one simple word.
Yeah.
Mind-blowing. Yeah, it's mind-blowing. And a lot of people don't allow to say it, but I think it's a bit worrying as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, especially as it applies to sales to some extent too.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like, yeah, we'll see. Generally, with these new innovations, the conversation is a new technology that enhances productivity and creates new lines of work and etc. I have a hard time seeing that happening when AI is actually making like all these go-to-market AI thingies, and when you have a ChatGPT who's writing all your content for you, actually not writing your content for you. Now that's wrong. Enhancing your content for you. Yeah, that job is really at stake. Or when you have AI automations like the ones that we're building with Flowla, or the ones that I see popping up every day. A lot of things are being automated now, so you don't need 20 people to do the job of 2 people plus some AI help.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the exciting part of it for me is kind of what has been exciting about B2B SaaS solutions for so long, which is, look, if you can simplify and automate things that just take a huge amount of time and resources, but ultimately don't need to have someone, so they can be freed up to do other more important, nuanced human stuff, then that's great. Yeah, exactly. Great. Okay, we're all on board with that. We don't want a sales rep to be spending hours and hours and hours doing admin, right? For example, really, we want them to be selling, right? Okay, cool, good. Same thing with AI. If we can bolster that and create ways in which they can do more of the human stuff, I'm all for that. I guess my concern with it is almost a more technical one, which is, and slightly existential one, I guess, which is that the AI is starting to now learn from itself. And the problem with that is it's always going to pick the most common denominator. So if, for example, it says, and we see this with human behavior too. Like, for example, on LinkedIn, if there's a huge sales cold calling influencer and they say this opener always works, and they talk about that for a month, everyone uses that cold calling opener for a year, and then everyone's sick of it, and then and it's the kind of same thing that's happening with AI. It's become very homogenized and safe, and there's no nuance within it. And so my concern is more that there's a lack of nuance, especially as it comes to rep feedback and coaching, which is obviously a direction that a lot of AI has gone into, within sales enablement, which is, again, really great and very useful, like Gong and Chorus and all this kind of stuff. But the problem with it is it's not encouraging anything sort of groundbreaking. Like, it's not really encouraging any, I don't know, sort of out the box thinking and, creativity. And I think that's what worries me, because all the reasons we said in part 1 about some of the core attributes a really good salesperson needs, obviously resilience being at the top, but also things like empathy and the others you mentioned. Like, these are really human traits. You can't, at least not now, replicate those in AI.
I read something. No, I think I listened to it was the head of product or chief product officer of OpenAI, ChatGPT, and who was saying, like, the version of AI that we see right now is the worst version of AI that will ever exist. So maybe some of the things that you mentioned will be taken care of in the process. AI learning from itself. Yeah, I saw this thing which is like maybe in the next generations will think that the capital of France is not Paris but Rome. But I mean, it was obviously an exaggeration, but for the same reason, like, you know, it will start basically scaling its own myths or disinformation. I guess those.
I saw a meme the other day similar along those lines. Sorry to interrupt, but just while I remember, they said that that in the future, if AI keeps learning from itself at this rate, the answer to everything will just be Hitler.
Oh,
because of the use of the word Hitler online is so high that eventually it's just going to learn that is the answer for everything. You know, have you heard about the concept that every argument online always ends up with someone calling the other Hitler? Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
No.
So every online argument always ends with someone calling the other Hitler. It's the same sort of concept. Like, someone's obviously taking it to the extreme, but it's like the same idea.
Yeah, there are so many Hitlers in the world, like mini Hitlers right now. I'm not going to go into that conversation.
No.
The thing about AI that you say there, yes, definitely. Like, you sort of have to be your own safeguard and your guardian of how to give direction to AI, and, you know, like, certainly you have to have the experience or that those learnings, and then be able to use AI in a way to shorten your repetitive processes, etc. Yeah, I never thought about that problem, because I obviously use it in a way where I know what I want to say or I know what I want to do. So it's never like a completely greenfield or from zero kind of approach that I take with the different AI tools. It's more, you know, make this better, or this is the basis of it. And when I feel like the result is not really accurate, I generally tend to have a say in it, or I can intervene.
Right. Yeah.
But
no, I've certainly seen it with sales, seeing it more and more. And the interesting thing is it's having an effect on morale too. So, you know, you see sales teams, you know, before, you know, back in the day when I was a sales leader, I would spend time with my sales reps. I'd sit down wherever I could, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not always possible if you have a large team, but you try and do some one-on-one. Like you said, you know, at least, you know, group call, you know, call listening, good practice sharing, and one-on-one coaching. Let's listen through your calls. Let's find out what's working, what isn't, etc. Now it's very commonplace across a lot of size teams to use AI to do that on a very regular basis. And sales leaders have got lazy, right? And now it's like, that's enough. I don't really need to sit with them. I'll sit down and do a performance review every 3 months instead. And yeah, what I'm hearing from sales leaders are complaints about teams and reps not hitting quota like they're used to. And then I'm hearing from the reps themselves, they're just not motivated to do it because they're not feeling like they're cared about. Right? You know, people want attention. You know, everyone wants attention, especially from your managers. You know, you want the praise and you want the criticism, you want the feedback to improve, and that's the thing that's going away. You know, and that's the feedback is just, it's okay, but it's, you know, we know the state of AI. It's not the same level as a human being. Like, give me someone with 20 plus years sales experience over AI any day of the week. Of course, AI knows everything about sales in the most homogenous, standard way. It doesn't know this guy who's my sales manager, who's been with this company for 5 years, knows everything about the product, everything about the ICP, was there at the beginning. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, I want that guy to tell me what's wrong with my sales call, not AI. You know what I mean? Like, that's the challenge we face right now. And I think it's a big contributor to why we have a lot of problems with go-to-market teams at the moment.
Maybe I haven't necessarily used a Gong or a Chorus or whatever in the last year or so with this purpose. I mean, generally, because of the purpose of what I do, I use the recording tools for more like sharing it with overall teams.
With others,
because, you know, product will build their product based on that, marketing will do this and that. And less so with the sales reps, because I haven't managed anyone bigger than like 5-6 people in the last 3 years at least, because I've been in my own startup in terms of sales. So we always had that very like, we would watch a Fathom together, or like Fathom will give us a report of, you know, like talking times or where you could be handling objections better. But those tools, like, what was it, Demo whatever, is it more commonplace now that people use those and just look at, you know, what the Gong report says and go off the back of that. Is that what you're saying?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, and you're right. They're a great starting point, for reps and for managers to sit down and have a dialogue. Yeah, unfortunately, there is, I think, a bit more of a reliance on that now.
Okay.
Especially as a team, as a business scales, because there's so many things to do, and also, I don't know about you, but I'm hearing more and more sales leaders also being quota carrying as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Which adds another level of complexity to it too.
Yeah, full cycle. Well, I've done that, and to be honest, it was fun for me, but it was different reasons. It was Series D and the beginning of COVID, and having my own quota was a blessing because I think it was good for the performance and for remuneration. Also, it teaches you what you need to know and how to manage your team much better.
Keeps
so
you
I'm
relevant.
not sure, but obviously if you're supposed to be managing a team of 50, it's different. For me it was 10 people or so.
It's an interesting challenge, but yeah, I'd be interested to see where it goes. Have you seen much sort of what's going on in terms of things like AI sales avatars, and things like that, and sort of AI SDR and all this kind of stuff? What's your thoughts on that?
I do. I haven't necessarily used any of those, or I haven't seen one that is really doing it. I haven't seen one that's been super impressive for me. Now, The tools that I'm saying tools on a daily basis. A lot of earlier stage startups are trying to build go-to-market AI agents. I've seen one or two, one from the Netherlands, one actually from Turkey are building, and it's automating workflows, especially in terms of business development. I see things like N8N, which are doing ICP validation. You just give them a list of ICP and they will validate and say these are the right ones for you or not. There's a lot of prospect building stuff. I see very practical things that do the job of a RevOps or maybe a generalist marketing manager who then hands those things to an AE or SDR to do the outbounding. And I really like those, and I try to integrate them into my workflows. Or, for example, I see now these new outbound tools, which are a bit like Clay, who do both intelligent prospect list building, then signal-based outreach.
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
And then writing the copy of the outreach. And I've seen one recently, which I really like. It's called Honey Sales. It's from Germany. And they do a really good job of doing all those things. Yeah, I really am very hopeful about the prospects, the future prospects of some of these tools. But mostly they're in again, I think that the line between sales and marketing in terms of demand generation is very blurry. Some put it under a marketing team, some under sales. I see most of the innovation around that space, like outbound demand generation, go-to-market essentials. Rather than anything that's really sales rep closing a deal, which Founder, for example, we're trying to do that.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. I'm the same as you. I'm very excited. I've been fortunate enough to have a couple of founders of some of these platforms on the show before, and it's really amazing the kind of, what they're doing, but then also their vision for kind of where it can go. It's really exciting to see that.
What I want is an end-to-end, and actually I haven't found it yet, but I want an end-to-end solution, or maybe something that can, really scrape the right sources and create the right persona, and then the prospect list, and then validate it, and then send it out. Do this whole thing. I've already mentioned a few tools which are doing bits and parts of it. Right now, I'm trying to do that. So, for example, I'm working with a fintech company. It is B2B, but it is B2C, but it's a bit like B2B2C. So it's a lot of mass marketing is needed, etc. And we're trying to figure out how to get to the persona faster and in a more credible way to someone who's gonna, drive sales urgently. And for example, for that product, I have to look at different areas of the internet, like Reddit and LinkedIn's and, followers of this or likers of that post, and get closer to the ICP and persona as quickly as possible. And I'm trying to figure out a way to automate that, for example. I haven't been able to so far do the whole thing in automation. There's the phantom busters who can extract prospects from LinkedIn for you, then you need to put it into like an outbound tool. The most primitive now, I guess, is Apollo. And then there's all these other innovations that I said, but there's nothing that does it end to end. I'm looking forward to maybe some of our listeners may be building something similar to that. So I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah. Or maybe they're waiting for an idea of something to build.
There
that.
You go. Build that.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. And I have a bit of a wish list too, but it's actually more related to the other end of what we were talking about, which is to do with this idea of building the sales engine internally. I would like something that actually sort of encourages you to start doing that. So that takes what were your learnings and sort of, do you know what I mean, and starts building, almost automating the development of the playbooks and the processes internally. I would like to start seeing some of that, because if I think that is something that is neglected by everything that I see. Like, we have these agents that, the go-to-market agents, like you said, but they're not then doing that other bit, which is like QA the founder or QA the salesperson to be like, why do you think that worked? Why didn't it? Next time, find out. Because I think there's always that. Everyone always builds the thing for the enterprise. No one's building it for the startup. You know what I mean? It's like, build it in a way that lets a startup grow from 0 to 1. I think that's the thing that I'd be really interested to see.
I love
and then
that.
Make it a really affordable price point, sell it to startups, and boom, you're off.
Yeah, I've spoken with a few founders. Actually, one of them that I'm advising is claiming to do that. I think they're making a bit of progress, but not necessarily. So I think that the end-to-end, like learning and improving things. But I really like what you say in terms of like the improvement and updating piece, because even if you record them once, like going back and recording and improving is something that is very like manual and human driven right now, right?
Yep.
So then I end up having like 10 versions of a similar thing in my Notion, for example, like your product iterations. Like
exactly.
You have version 1, you have 2, 3. Something that can actually help accelerate that would be actually fantastic.
Pull all the context, from these different sources, and just be like, look, we think that, based on this month's activities, actually this might be the better approach. From now on, try this, and this, stuff like that. I think it'd be great. Yeah. Acting like that person you were talking about, essentially, that's very hard to find. That person that can come in, kind of like what we do, but and look at that bigger picture and try and put it all together, because that is really difficult. And there are very few people like that in the world. I think that would be incredibly. Yeah.
Good. I like that.
On the note of you, going back to sort of you being a fractional, then I'm curious to know, working at this level, because these are complex things, right? Looking at all of these threads for an organization and doing it on a fractional basis. I'm often asked this by other fractionals too. Like, how do you manage with the continuous context switching, and just being able to give enough time to each of these projects? Because even just what you described there of like trying to automate these things is like, okay, well, how much time do you put into actually doing it versus trying to find a technological solution versus, you know what I mean? Like, versus outsourcing it. How do you balance all of that?
Question. I mean, probably I'm not the best person to answer this, because it's been it's still very early days for me. So I basically decided to step down in November, decided to do a bit of advisory work in December, and I did my launch, like I announced it, and then I got some inbound interest at the back of that, and I'm working at the back of that. And right now, for example, I think I'm working with 7 or 8 different clients in different capacity. I try to do like, and actually this, like, for example, I'm productizing myself and my time and how I help different people. So the idea for me, like the mid-level is almost like an hands-on advisor, where you can spend 3-4 hours a week with a team and build them a Notion and help them build their wiki. And every week we're handling something and we're working towards a timeline. That's like the basic thing that you can do, and I think that's doable. But a few of these founders, especially solo founders, they will ask me to be, can you actually be a bit more hands-on than this? Can you actually come and spend like 1 day or 1.5? They don't say that, by the way, like spend 1 or 1, but they want you to solve everything. So that's and they want you to get to leads very quickly, which is why I think at a given time I can only do like 2-3 like fractional go-to-market partner roles, CRO/CMO, and that's doable for me. And on top of that, I do a bit of consultant advisor work. Like, for example, I do, some people will come to me, can you help me figure out my outbound stack and do my first test for 3 months, or like build a marketing pipeline, or help our content person to actually figure out what needs to be done, and so we have better SEO and etc. The thing that makes it manageable so far for me is that I've been there, done that. So I'm not reinventing the wheel. So it's a lot of them are very like intuitive to me. The thing that makes it difficult is when you want to give 200% to everyone. That then becomes a bit of a challenge. And if you're not giving your 200% at this stage, some things won't work. So I might have to end up dropping some because of that. And the other thing is I now figure very quickly that at this early stage, you don't do something fractional just for the retainers, just for a bit of, fee here or there. I'm trying to work with people whose future I believe in, and at least like 6 months to a year with those people. Like if I'm doing something fractional, it should be 6 months to a year, and I should have a stake, like either like a percentage of the revenue or like a fundraising event where I can get. And I think founders really love this. Like when I was a founder, I was the most frugal, terrible person as well. Like I tried to get everything for free or as low as possible, which is completely fine and fair for every founder. So for me, what I do now, like I try to go very success or result based as well. And I try to work with people where I can feel like we can drive results together. Maybe ask me this question 6 months to a year when I'm when I've been there a little bit more. But yeah, maybe you should give me your tips and learnings from all this experience about this.
Man, I have no idea. I'm still figuring it out too.
Really?
I haven't met any fractional that has it fully figured out.
Oh,
yeah, I mean,
sure.
I think the thing that I'm still really figuring out is, well, you mentioned about productizing yourself. And the thing that I haven't been good at is doing that, because I've been so focused on delivering for clients that I've been neglecting that part of myself, and my business. And I know that's a terrible idea, because of course that's very important for scale, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, and that's a shame. But I know it's something that I need to do, and I have done for a couple of years. But I guess the thing that I'm curious to know your thoughts on this early on in your journey too is I've had to spend quite a lot of time, I guess, on ensuring there's alignment, or at least understanding that engaging with a fractional, equivalent to someone like myself as a CCO versus a full-time results in very different outcomes over a very different time period. Like, that if you're going to engage with someone and you're going to have them a couple of hours a week, you're not going to get the same results in the same time frame as if you had someone full-time working with you. And a lot of it is spent time actually setting the scene for that, but then also ensuring that there's a relative amount of sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like not reminders, but like kind of comfort that you need to provide sometimes. Say, look, we are on the right track. It's like we are doing the right things at the right time. It's just that, when you put this into context, we've been working together for 3 months, 6 months, whatever, but actually it's equivalent to like half a month. Give yourself a break, give me a break, give everyone else in the team a bit of a break. And I think that's often been the bit that very early on when I first started, especially, I didn't know how to manage very well, and it could have resulted in conflict. But now I've kind of put systems in place to ensure there's kind of a bit of a consistent comfort that's being given from that.
I think for me, why I'm productizing things is, as I said, like so I've just written like a playbook on how to go from 0 to 3 million, especially if you're a B2B SaaS business.
Which I would like to get a copy of, and we should put in the description of this episode so people can check it out. Yeah. And
honestly, like after you've done the amount of work that I've done in go-to-market essentials, like figuring out your persona and ICP and how you're going to reach them and how you're going to close them, why you're not closing, all these objections that we mentioned, etc., like recording all those things. If you show that you're doing the right things on a weekly basis and there's progress on a weekly basis, I think that should be more than enough.
Raising investment is painful enough without getting bogged down in legal costs. That's why I'm using Founder Catalyst, today's sponsor for Peer, my startup's pre-seed raise. We've been lucky enough to have Sam, the CEO of Founder Catalyst, on the show before. Go and check out that episode. Their funding round service offers the most cost-effective way to produce funding round legals in the UK. It's just £1,495 excluding VAT, with no monthly fees or hidden extras, no matter how much you're raising. One Founder Catalyst customer recently raised 2.7 million and saved around £10,000 compared to the next option. If you're looking for SEIS, EIS Advanced Assurance, they've got a 100% success rate over the last 3 years. Founder Catalyst is built by founders for founders, and from my own experience, I can't recommend them enough. You can scan the QR code on the screen around here somewhere or around there somewhere, I don't know, or use the link in the description for 5% off. Thank you to Founder Catalyst for sponsoring this episode. Now back to it.
and some of the results will come in form of leads or like sales closed sooner or later. I would say quite the opposite to what you just said, like give me a break if you hire the full-time person, da 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 da. The full-time person will come. They're going to be asking much more probably, or they're going to be wanting more equity, etc. And a lot of times they will be learning all this from scratch. Like I think people like us, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to learn from the beginning, you know.
We've got our own playbooks, yeah.
A lot of times, like when people ask me something, they get an answer almost immediately, if not, you know, within the next hour or so, you know. You won't have that, unfortunately, when you're employing a team. And
That's
employing a team is really good when you figured some stuff out. And I've done the same mistake as a founder, and before that as an employee as well, like spent months trying to train people who I shouldn't have hired in the first place, have kept in the team people I should have fired in the first place or sooner. So I think, like, I come in and I say, like, these are the 10 things we're doing in this timeline. Are you okay with that? So very early in the journey, I shake hands with people. These are what we're gonna do. My first 1 or 2 weeks is like creating like a go-to-market one-pager, which is who are you, what's your product, who are you selling to sell this to, when you build in the next 6 months to a year, who are you going to start selling to, how do you want to generate leads, therefore what do we have to work backwards from, what kind of infrastructure you need for this. Like for example, with one of my clients now, we're on the 3rd month of working together, and you're right, like it's only 1 or 1.5 day, but we've already built like the whole playbook and done so much work and already generating leads, and we're now going to start doing like from LinkedIn outreach to email outreach. And the alternative is to work with an agency who claims to do that, which they can't. And they'll be like, can you give us a playbook? Can you give us a webinar? Can you give us a landing page?
Right, so you'd have to do that all anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So we're doing all that anyway.
Yeah.
And we're doing it in a way where, for me, I think I'm figuring out who is the person who is going to pay me on a monthly basis, so I don't have to ask the other pre-revenue for anything, and I can help them to go to the fundraising process, and then they can work with me to do that. So I think the most beautiful relation now is like I have 1 or 2 VC relations where they're like, can you help this? Can you help that? And that's working out really well because they know very quickly, like, I can save this team 6 months. I can help them make revenue, you know, in a month rather than 12 months, or save them the mistakes, or etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you, like myself, we seem to like doing the pro bono stuff as well. Like,
yeah. You have to do things for free.
Yeah.
And sometimes I haven't done this, but I think someone told me before I started doing like consulting work, do like 3 or 4 of your first clients for free because it'll take the pressure off and etc. And I did a lot of free, like I still do, like I'm a mentor in accelerators. I do pro bono work a lot, but at the same time, doing something for free is not going to keep you motivated for a very long time. So I think a better way is understanding the remuneration structure, which is you can use a mix of retainers, success fees, and equity. And if you place the right structure, then I think it motivates both parties to work together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's what I want. Like for me, I want to have like equity in like 100 startups in the next few years. That's why I chose to do this. Like I don't care if it's 0.1% or 1%, whatever, you know, based on the relationship. But I want to be invested in, like, because I've been an angel investor before, and I still am, but haven't done like in the last 1 year. But that way I'm an angel investor in kind, and I can be invested in the future of that company.
It sounds like we've got very, very similar goals there. Yeah.
Really?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. But also, you know, just again, to go back to that human thing, it's the ones that are at that stage, pre-revenue, pre-seed, that, you know, I'm in, and I know plenty of others that have been in, which quite often need the help the most. And I think are very often gate kept from, especially for when it comes from sales related sort of things. There's so much gatekeeping around that, and I find it to be an incredibly predatory part of the startup ecosystem. Actually, like there's, you know, the sharks circle more around go-to-market knowledge than anything else when it comes to, because it's obviously it's where the money's tied in, it's where revenue generation is tied in, so that's where it all comes in. And I find that to be very shameful, like to be associated in any way as someone in sales with those kinds of practices. You know, it's like, buy my this, buy my that, buy my whatever, and it's like, why don't you just tell them, man? It's like, it's not complicated. Like, you know, it's made out to be this really complicated, mystical sort of thing. And like you said, it's like, actually, no, there are just these very straightforward main principles that if you just explain to people, they could be successful, and then they might work with you later. It's like, come on, like, you know, that winds me up a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of people fall into that trap of loudmouth, and yeah, there's a lot of like money making around startup founders, and I certainly found myself in situations where I gave some of that money to people who are in that mindset, and it's been some of the most horrible experiences. I think my most horrible experiences were those, and hiring like terrible fit, one or two, of being a startup founder myself. Yeah.
How have you learned to sort of, if at all, to recognize that now? Like, are there some, especially from a hiring perspective, like if we talk about that?
Well, hiring, for sure. I think so. The thing is, because now I'm doing the consultant work, I call it a go-to-market partner, and I go into the conversation saying, I'm your GTM partner. You can use me as a fractional, as a consultant, as an advisor. Let's decide what do we do together if we like each other. So a lot of people will be trying to, a lot of founders will be looking for like, agency, outreach, leads, you know, or others will be like content and, you know, create my LinkedIn founder brand or whatever. So sometimes I'm thinking maybe I should just put that and not complicate it for anybody and just say, but I think those are very transactional relations, and I've never seen them work properly in my time. You know, a lot of times they really fail. So what I try to do for myself is to become the center and have a few partners who can do bits and bobs. You know, like if you need some outbound, if you need some content writing, I use these people for myself, and hopefully they can help you to do the same. So therefore, I try to keep that hiring bit for the very early stage in-house with people I work with. But hiring mistakes that I've made and etc., that's another topic where that's a very tough one, because the people who, it's a tough one, because when you're an early stage startup, you don't have a lot of money. So what you can give in return is either some equity or some result-based, you know, like success fee or commission. Some people will be okay with that situation, others won't. So I think throughout the interview process, you have to figure that out. Like, you know, someone's not joining you with the wrong mindset, or understanding that this is a longer term investment from their side, and in return they might be getting something else, which is maybe like a career boost. You know, maybe they're stuck in an enterprise doing the same thing over and over, where here they'll have much more responsibility. They'll learn a lot of things. Actually, it's in the playbook as well, but for me, when you go through stage 1 to 7, which is your message market fit, your first 20 customers, there you need a bit of a generalist, especially in terms of marketing, general marketing manager, like your website, your copies, your first outbound tests. That kind of person is great. I'm a big believer in content-led growth, content and community. So once you understand what you need to write about, bring a head of content, and hopefully someone who is okay to build the community as well, because otherwise you have to do that as a founder, which can be a little bit, you know, like consuming. So that can be your second hire. If you want to do some outbound tests, get 1 or 2 SDRs, but always get 2 SDRs actually, because you're going to create a bit of competition between the two, which is actually useful. But overarching theme should be this. Unfortunately, you can't outsource the problem to your hires, which is why I decided to do what I'm doing now. What do I mean by that? As a founder, you need to crack things. You need to figure out your product, your founder-led sales, your marketing, and then hand it over to somebody to replicate it, to develop it, to scale it. Unfortunately, at your stage, the talent you'll be able to bring in will not have cracked everything you would expect from them. And you will have to crack those things together. So the biggest learning for me in hiring, unfortunately, a very tough learning, was accepting the fact that, and I see this with people I advise, they're like, you know, I'm ex-consultant, ex-banker, ex-whatever, I take something from 0 to whatever, I own the whole thing, ownership, responsibility. Well, yeah, but this person doesn't have the same mindset. Often they'll be looking for you to show them how to do things, you know? Founders will be very frustrated, like, why aren't they owning? I used to own my thing, and etc. It's also a different generation. They do things differently. So I think as a founder, you need to know when you're hiring, you won't be outsourcing your problems at the early stage until you're Series A or something. Even then, you'll bring in a CRO and they'll be like, they've scaled something. They had a team of 5 people doing everything for them, and you hope for them to do it, and they won't do it.
It's similar problems in a different context.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I suppose, and I agree with you 100%, but then I guess you also have that issue that I've noticed well when hiring in those situations, that you've also got to try and hire someone that is capable of taking what you have cracked and developing it, you know, and that in of itself is a skill set that is very rare. And so not everyone knows how to do that. Most people just want a set of instructions to follow, and a lot of, you know, especially if you've not worked in a startup before and you don't have that. And that's actually where usually I think the culture shock from working in a corporate role to working in a startup comes in. It's that expectancy in a startup that you are constantly given stuff and you are kind of expected to follow it, yes, but also put your own flair on it, experiment, try things, and then log what works, what doesn't, build that back in. And that's almost something that isn't said. Like in interviews, in the hiring process, in the onboarding process, it's just expected. And so it's no wonder why people crash and burn and are unable to succeed. But there's also, like you said, about there being a need for more generalists early on. There is definitely a kind of early stage employee profile or persona versus a kind of a later stage employee persona. Like there's definitely differences, you know, in terms of
completely
what you
different.
need.
And, you know, unfortunately, I'll say this, if you're looking for if the person is like, you know, looking for a 9-to-5 job, or
if you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
Have very clear boundaries around their job description, like what's expected of them. That job description evolves in the next 6 months when we're going through a different. That don't work for one of my worst hiring mistakes, I think, and I don't know if I could figure out the signals before, but I hired someone and I was doing their job for like a month almost, and she was driving me crazy. And then I figured I was going to have the conversation like, this isn't working, and she had the conversation with me, I'm leaving. And then the next day she started a new job, and then I figured that she got into the job that I hired her into for the 1 month that she was on notice or whatever. Between she had already accepted the other job, and to this day I can't believe how I didn't pick the signals. The signals were there, but I think I was very desperate to hire somebody very quickly because I knew what I needed and I thought they could do it, and I was trying to outsource a problem, you know, which I had to crack myself.
Yeah.
And then I had the biggest shock of integrity. Like, how can you, you did it for 1 month of salary from a startup? Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, I think it's really hard because, like you said, there has to be an understanding, ideally, from employees working in a startup that it's not your typical 9-to-5. But at the same time, we have to understand as founders that not everyone's going to want to own their job in the way that we do. And it's a really difficult balance. Like, you know, we can't expect everyone to be as passionate about their business as us. They just work for us. We're paying them probably below market salary. We have to have a bit of a balance there. And I think that's the most difficult contradictory thing to do as a founder or a leader in a startup. It's like, we need to be empathetic of it. It's like, we're paying you like 40% of the salary you could get over there, but we want you to respond to emails and late in the evening, and like, you know, it's like, come on, like,
that's such a great point. And I certainly did expect that from people I hired, and some of them were okay with that, some of them weren't.
Right.
And then obviously you learn. But now I see that with founders that I work with who have the exact same attitude towards the people they hire.
Yeah.
And I'm saying these exact same things, but
and it's like, oh, but I told them before they started work that this was the case. It's like, but things change, man.
Well, I had somebody who left, and he was really pissed, like, you know, this is too much work, and I didn't sign up for this, and etc. And I thought I had explained, and we had a okay relationship, by the way. And then 1 month down the line or 2, he tried somewhere else, and he came back. He actually deleted me from LinkedIn, or, you know, disconnected. He was so pissed apparently. And then he reconnected with me and he wrote like, I'm really sorry. I realized that, actually it was a blessing, and like
I've had that same thing too. I've
really?
had it. Yeah, I've had
and
it too.
I was like, I'm glad you learned.
Yeah, because they just suddenly realize that environment that gives them so much more freedom to be creative and explore and like all that, and then they're like stuck in a call center somewhere, like, and they're like, this is soul destroying. Everyone's an asshole. I've had that. And by then, unfortunately, it was too late. We'd hired someone else. I'm like, dude, we would have you back like that.
Really?
But we can't. Yeah, it was really heartbreaking, actually.
I don't think I would have them back, and I didn't have them back. Actually,
no, not that one.
I had someone much better.
Fair enough.
But I definitely have been the monster founder, expecting everyone to be, I don't know, maybe monster founder is a bit too much, because I've always tried to keep the kindness and decency, but you expect people to own it the way you do, and of course it's not possible. I did expect that, because as I say, like, the reason I decided to be a founder, one of the reasons was I did that for somebody else, and I always performed at that level,
Yeah.
And I never had that mindset that a job is just a job, it just pays you, blah, blah, blah. Maybe I should have. Maybe now I know better, but I
think it depends. Context matters, though, right? It's like, I'm an ex-chef many years ago, so food is a big thing for me, right? And so I remember when I first met my wife and we went out for a meal somewhere. And it was really, I wanted to impress her. We got one of our first dates, and we took her for a nice meal, and my steak wasn't cooked properly. And I complained about the fact that it wasn't cooked properly. A few months later, we go to another place. It wasn't as highbrow. I had a steak. It wasn't cooked properly. I didn't say anything. And my wife said, why didn't you say anything? I said, because I didn't pay £60 for this. I paid 20. It's like, I know what I'm getting, and you know what I mean? And I knew that coming in.
Of course,
So there's a kind of a thing there, I think, which is like, know what you get into. But I think one of the bigger problems with why, and I kind of get it as to why, and I had that with jobs, right? So if I work for something as like, I'm getting that wage, this is the job. It's like, okay, fine. Like, I know I'm just going to treat this as a 9 to 5 because that's how I'm seen. That was the point I'm making with the steak, I guess. But then working with startups, like, different. I get out what I put in, or at least I should. And I suppose that brings me to this other thing, which has always irritated me, I think, about startup culture, which is still a big problem and very prevalent, which is startups are pretty bad at later stages of looking after those that made them. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And that
Very
is
fair point.
And that is exactly why maybe you shouldn't give a shit if you're an early stage employee. I can't kind of blame you. Like, we need A players. We absolutely need A players to build our startups. But then by the time we reach Series A, B, C, have we promoted them? Have we given them all the learning and development and career development opportunities we promised that we would to put them into those leadership roles, to give them equity and do that? No, quite often not. There's a lot of false promises made, broken promises made there, and understandably so, because at the end of the day, being a founder is highly complex. There's a lot of moving parts, and priorities change. When there's 4 of you in a basement office all working together, you're going to promise the world to each other. But then when you're answering to a board of 20-odd people, VCs, this, that, and the other, suddenly, Karen, who you hired in month 2, sorry, but, I'm sorry I didn't train you up and make you the general manager. It's like, oh shit. So that person's taking that experience, going to the next job and saying, being promised all the things in the interview, and they're like, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, great, I'll start tomorrow. And then they're just showing up 9 to 5. And why wouldn't she?
Yeah, it's 200%. Yeah, it made me reflect on all the different people that I've seen in different workplace environments. And then it makes me think it's a bit like that's the game we're put in. Like, as a founder, you've raised a bit. You're trying to build an A team.
It's like in sales when you say that's on the roadmap.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like it's on the roadmap that you'll be promoted and that you'll get a pay rise and you'll get this and we'll give you support and train you how to be this leader and all that. And it's like, does it ever happen?
Yeah, well,
rarely does it happen.
Hearts are gonna be broken, definitely. Lies will be told both ways. I think the game is rigged because, like, at the end of the day, who makes the most from this is sometimes not even the founders. So it's like the people who give you the money.
And the same thing happens with founders, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I've had people on the show before. We talked about how the transition from startup to scale up can often see founders moving on, being kicked out, etc. And I think there's a lot that the investment landscape has to answer for the same thing, where they sort of promise the world, we'll help you transition to be able to run a large enterprise, we'll give you the training, we'll give you the support. Never happens. And then a year later, sorry, but you're not quite what we need now to lead this company forward. And it's like, why didn't you help me? Why didn't you teach me? You know, and I think that's what overall we're doing a bad job of doing, you know, because these are the people that will be there for when the shit hits the fan. You know what I mean? And I'm a big believer of that. Like, you know, as you probably know, when you get, you know, startups are up and down, like suddenly something can crash and it's like, oh, we've had to lay off, you know, X amount of people. We've had to scale back. But that core team still says that they're going to be there for you. Like they were there from the beginning. They're there for you now. They're going to bleed for you. It's like, if you do not look after them, like you're setting a bad precedent for you, but also I think you're setting a bad precedent for the ecosystem at large on how we treat these people who are helping you build dreams. You know what I mean?
I've never had that firsthand, but I've definitely seen it happening in different startups I worked where I saw those people leaving, and maybe I was also judgmental towards them because I was brought in as an experienced employee with a certain mission, having to work with somebody who's not able to deliver to that level because they were there from the beginning, but actually, you know, they're not up to par with the current job,
right?
Whether they weren't trained to be or they were never going to be or whatever. But I think it's the game. It's hurtful.
It is, and like you said, and like you said early on, you have to hire those people who are willing to take that sort of salary. Maybe it's less experience and so on, but yeah. But I do think that there's something to be very cognitive of in those situations, that you might be hiring those people, but they are going to bleed for you. What can you do to support them to grow into what the role needs them to be later, so you don't get that situation where you're bringing in a consultant, the consultant saying, this guy's no good, sack him.
They're gonna bleed. Like the pain will be there, but at least like you have to treat them fairly in that, like if you promise a certain amount of equity, you should give them that. I've seen people promising equity and not giving, you know, that I think is unacceptable. But otherwise,
I don't think people care so much about equity as they do about learning and growing in their role and developing. You know, that's what they want, I think, more than anything in those.
Sure, I mean, if you know the company will exit and you'll have a good amount of money from that, why wouldn't?
Well, yeah, that helps too. But you know, that can't hurt. That can sweeten the deal. But like, I've been in that position before. You know, but very early on in my career, you know, and then I've seen others treated the same multiple times, and then I've been later in my career, more recently, that guy like you going in, seeing people in that position who are unhappy, seeing people get hired into a role that they were promised, you know, things like that. And I developed, initially I was skeptical, and then I developed some empathy for it over time, and I was like, no, I can get it, because I mean, you were made promises that weren't kept, and you probably fucked up too, but like at the same time, like, you know, we've got to keep our promises. So
I agree.
But anyway, interesting topic. It may be something we should all be a bit more cognizant of, but we've run out of time. I told you that it goes fast. I talk a lot of rubbish, so it goes quickly. And you were worried, you know, before we clicked record in part 1, you were like, oh, I'm worried if I'm going to have enough to talk about.
Talking is fun.
It is, and we could probably talk for another couple of hours, to be honest, but I will let you go. It's the weekend as of this recording, so I'll let you go and enjoy that. But thank you so much for joining. I'll put the link to your LinkedIn website, everything like that, in the description, and your book, so give me a link for that and I can put that in. And is there anything else you want to shout out or, you know, mention?
A few things maybe I can say, because now I work a lot with founders or go-to-market, I think, who are trying to figure out product market fit. We didn't really touch on this a lot, but I think you shouldn't think of PMF as a destination you're trying to reach, but you should always iterate and figure out, you know, like as you get closer, then you might be at a time to hire full-time. Before that, you might want to consider some alternative options, especially if you don't have the co-founder support to, you know, like if this trio of founders that really works well, like which was definitely my team, like the tech, product, and hustler or go-to-market person. If you don't have one of those, I think you need to start complementing with those. The other thing I'll say is treat your go-to-market the way you treat your product. What I mean by that is test, iterate, improve on a weekly, bi-weekly way. Bring people with that mindset. It shouldn't be like, oh, here is 1,000 leads, let's send them all the same message and figure out if it lands anywhere and we only get 2 big meetings. That shouldn't be your approach to your go-to-market. It should be like every week, improve, learn, iterate, try something new. So be very agile with your go-to-market, the same way you are with your product and your building, your tech building.
Great advice. Good advice. Cool. And so yeah, you're the guy to get in touch with if anyone needs any help on those things, which a lot of people who listen and watch the show are at that stage. So make sure you get in touch, or with me. But you'd be better. You'd been doing it longer.
Both of us.
No, I don't do this show for self promotion. I want to put the spotlight on others, and you would definitely be the guys. So, thanks so much again for joining me. We're going to stay in touch.
Thanks for having me.
And my pleasure. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
Thank you for listening and/or watching. Please like and subscribe. Or if you are listening via podcasting service and want to show your support, consider rating or leaving a review. It really helps. See you next week.